You're back on Rainier Avenue Radio.world with me, Tony B. This is our special programming for the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding areas. Once again, I have the pleasure of having our King County Council member for District 2 joining us, Mr. Girmay Zahilay. Council
How
member,
you
are you
doing,
there?
Tony B? Great to see you.
Under the circumstances, okay, it's already been a busy day. It
hmm
seems as though every day I knew this interview was coming up, and every day there was something new to talk about.
Absolutely. We're under four state of emergency orders. It's shocking to be under one. So it's just one crisis after another these days. 2020 has been that kind of year.
Well, I just left a group of students at Franklin who had organized a demonstration, a stay in place demonstration, where they were peacefully demonstrating in support of Black lives. Cars were honking. Of course, this is a community of folks who are from diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures, diverse ethnicities. Of course, it's also one of your districts. The demonstration was peaceful. Cars were driving by and honking in support of what they were doing, and then I had to rush. I got back here a little late, and I was having a conversation with a gentleman live from Monroe Correctional Facility who was sharing with us what was and what was not taking place in regard to their health and safety, and how it was impacting those who are incarcerated as well as staff at Monroe Correctional Facility. And at 3:30, be heading up to less shy. Well, I won't be, but Rainier Avenue Radio will be, so that we can be at the rally where the discussion for K through fifth graders, 6 to 12-year-olds, get to express how this is impacting them, not only COVID
Mm.
19, but also the murder of George Floyd. And so I've been busy, and I know
Oh,
that you've been busy. So just on that note, we'll start with that. King County Council Member Zahilay, let's talk about the impact of our youth, the impact that this has on our youth. And I'd like to get your feedback on this. We had a K through 5 and a middle school and high school represented from our communities. And one of the things that was consistent was for them, it was, well, we've always known this existed, and we've been told by our parents to be prepared about doing things while we're black. I would just like to get your feedback on your thoughts about the impact that this is having on our youth.
well, our youth are paying the consequences of our decisions. COVID-19 and George Floyd might seem like two separate things, but really they're both the consequence of generations of racial injustice. You are a big advocate, Tony B, for South Seattle and how COVID-19 impacts Black people, brown people in South Seattle more than other groups. And that's because of sustained, consistent, structural racism across time. And that's the same thing that played out that ended up murdering George Floyd. And so our youth are the ones who have to inherit these policy consequences. And we're absolutely right for lifting their voices and hearing from them and hearing what solutions they think are best. So I'm definitely plugged in with the ASBs at Franklin and Rainier Beach and Cleveland, and have been communicating with them on Instagram. And I did see how powerful that Franklin protest was today.
What is the messaging that you're hearing? And first of all, thank you for doing that. I mentioned the last time we spoke that your youth and energy and dynamism, I think, have been a boon for us during this pandemic. What you've been able to bring to our community in regards to your visibility and outreach, and I guess that's just another example. So, what have you been hearing from seniors, from high school, from middle school, from the peers, their peers? How are they sharing this information, and what can you share with us that they're telling you?
So a few weeks ago, I had a youth town hall, a virtual forum for seniors, for high school seniors and college seniors around King County to come on and share what they're going through with us. I was joined by Senator Saldana, School Board Director Hersey, Councilmember Tammy Morales, and several others. And what we heard is that they're going through a really tough time. You know, number one, of course, they're missing out on really important moments in their lives, like graduations and proms and things like that. But more importantly, they feel like they're sidelined during a really historic time. They can't leave their house. They're seeing people who look like them being murdered in the street. They're seeing their family members being laid off. They're seeing so much injustice all around them, and they're looking for ways to participate. They're also feeling a lot of mental health consequences from the isolation, and some of them don't come from healthy homes, so they're not at peace when they're at home. And so there's just a lot going on, and we need to make sure that we're listening to them and providing them the solutions that they're asking for. So from that town hall that we held, where we've prepared a few one-page documents that address what their questions and concerns were, and making sure we're connecting them to the right resources. And I think centering them in all that we do is going to be really important moving forward.
What can our political leaders do as we move forward to support our future, our youth, and I'll say maybe our seniors right now, who are going to be moving into a workforce that has reached record unemployment levels, that are moving into a stagnant workforce that now, again, I like the way that Will Smith phrased it. I thought it was very poignant. Racism has already existed, and now it's just being filmed.
Yep.
What can, as political leaders, what are there things that are being discussed? What are the things that should be discussed from your perspective as we, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but move into a paradigm shift, moving forward to be more prepared to make sure that equity means what it's supposed to mean?
Absolutely. The first thing that has just been so mind blowing to me about our youth that I've been interacting with in the past few months and past year, they are way smarter than I used to be and that my generation was, in terms of how knowledgeable they are about the issues. And so they're not going to fall for the usual value statements that most politicians do. You can't just get up there to them and say, I care about this, or this is wrong. They want to hear a plan. They want to hear, what are you going to do? And Tony B, you've always been really great about parsing through that kind of verbiage and getting to what is the actual plan. And so I think, number one, we need to be listening to them and making sure that we're in touch with them and having them shape our policies. But number two, we're taking that information and actually creating a roadmap to change. And that's one thing that I've been calling for recently around police reform and accountability, is that we can't just say, you know, what happened to George Floyd is wrong. We say that, and then we show what our plan is. So I released a 5-point plan that I hope that all elected officials at every level can take a pledge to committing to making change. And those 5 are demilitarizing our police, aka taking an accounting of all of the equipment that's coming from the federal government and the military and getting rid of that. Having more accountability and transparency in police union contracts. Number 3, restricting permissible use of force by the police, especially deadly force. Number 4, giving subpoena and other investigative powers to police oversight boards, community oversight boards. And number 5, redirecting police department funding to community-based alternatives. We're seeing a police force that's way too powerful, and we're seeing community-based alternatives that are more effective going under-resourced and underfunded. So those are the 5 things and the roadmap items that I've been hearing from our youth, and those are the ones that I've pledged to, and I hope that others will pledge to as well.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.World. It's me, Tony B. My guest is King County Councilmember Girmay Zahilay. He just shared with us a 5-point plan. And you know what? I'm going to ask you to give that to us one more again. Rather than just fill the room with rhetoric, you've come up with something that I think that people are desperately looking for right now, is what's next. And so, if you don't mind, please share with us again this plan that you're sharing, and you're sharing this with other council members.
With other council members, other state level elected officials, other school board members, because this is going to take all hands on deck to change, because no one government entity has the jurisdiction to make all of the changes. And so these are all things that we should advance if we can, and if we don't have the jurisdiction, support it through our advocacy power. And so last week, once all of this started happening, at least the latest murder, I made a video asking especially our youth to send me your policy ideas. We're done with symbolic gestures. We're done with people making value statements. We want a plan. And so hundreds of young people sent me their plan, and we prioritized the top 5 that we heard from them, and we created a 5-point roadmap, and I'll share them with you. Number 1, and these are in no particular order, they need to happen. Number 1, demilitarize the police, aka take an accounting of all of the military equipment that's coming from the federal government and get rid of it. We don't need tanks and bazookas and riot shields and all these things that are coming in from the military on our streets. Number 2, restrict permissible use of force by police, especially deadly force. Number 3, increase accountability and transparency in police union contracts. Number 4, give subpoena and other investigative powers to a community oversight board. And number 5, redirect police department funding to community-based alternatives.
What would you say to those youth who are listening now, who don't know what to do? And you've just outlined the 5-point plan, but some action, or anything that you can think of for those who are listening right now, who are youth, who have been thrown into this whirlwind, and they get it. They know that it's impacting them. If they're not black, they see it impacting their peers. But there's still confusion about what can I do. And I'll start with that. I've got another part to this question, but I'll start with that.
Absolutely. My first priority is keeping our young people healthy. We're in a global pandemic, and I don't want them putting themselves in harm's way. I know as Black people, we often have to choose between our own physical and mental health and justice. And so I'm not going to put that burden on them. I'll go out into the streets for them, my own. I know that some of them will, despite the global pandemic, still put themselves in harm's way for justice, and I'm so grateful for that. But I think they should really lean into a virtual strategy, because they are the generation of social media and email and phone. And so there are ways that they can affect change without putting themselves in front of physical harm. And, one great example that I mentioned before is Tony B. I got to give you your credit. If they do what you're doing, I think they could be powerful. And that is to call on their elected officials, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, and get them on a virtual Zoom or a radio or a phone call or email and ask them, what is your plan? We understand you care. We understand the value statements you've made. Show us the roadmap and hold them accountable to that. So they all can access their elected officials' emails and phone numbers. They all, at least the ones who have access to internet, can have a Zoom meeting, and they can call them forward and say, share with us what your plan is, and then hold them accountable to that.
Councilmember Zahilay, the barriers that are faced to voting and civic engagement in our South Seattle communities, which is again what I'm focusing on, include language barriers, confusion about voter eligibility, mixed citizenship status families, and of course there's a sense of exclusion from the spheres of influence, mistrust of community outsiders. We do have transient populations as well that make educating voters and mobilizing voters in our communities, a little bit more difficult. And voting is an expression of hope. Voting is a belief that a citizen's input into the system will show results. But without hope, marginalized community members don't think anything they do or say will change this world. And so, having said that, we have an election coming up. What is it that you want to say to our community about the importance of voting?
Man, there's a lot to say about the importance of voting. You know, we are seeing a president right now that is a fascist, that has no problems being overtly racist, that is literally directing his military to come in and quell our movements for justice. And he doesn't shy away from using the kind of rhetoric that's necessary to incite violence and incite uh, racist racists into coming out and harming our communities. So we need to get him out of there. And I hope that we will vote in a way that does get him out of there, vote in a way that shows what we care about. And also, I'm not saying just without accountability, vote Democrat. We also need to hold Democrats accountable. We need Medicare for all right now. We need basic income programs. We need small business support. We need our federal government to step up in a way that it's never stepped up before. And so that means holding all sides accountable, sharing with them that the Black community's vote, which is integral to the success of the Democratic Party, is not to be taken for granted. We need to hold them accountable and say, what are you doing for us? Show us the plan, and then you can get our vote.
And for some people that will resonate, Councilmember Zahilay, for those who are saying it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't count, it won't make any difference, it's not going to change anything. Again, the vote is hope, and without the thought that it will mean something, people choose not to vote. Again, right now, the importance of the vote to those people who are feeling very passionate about what's taking place in our country, but don't think their vote is going to make a difference.
Your vote absolutely makes a difference. First of all, I'm not one to shame people for exercising their right not to vote if they're doing so in a informed way. You know, oftentimes our presidential races are between two people that you don't feel like are the right people, and understandably so. But when we're talking about local elections at the local level, when people are deciding how much funding our nonprofits are going to get, how much support our small businesses are going to get, how equitable our housing policies are going to be, how punishment oriented and racist our criminal legal systems are going to be, we need to vote. We need to create change. And, you know, every single elected official who is progressive and is thinking about Black and brown people and is thinking about real equity is thinking, man, I wish that I had more allies with me to vote with me in order to create the changes that I want. Because if we had majorities on, you know, local city councils, county councils, state level, we could really get some stuff done. And I would not belittle the aspect of needing to vote at the local and state levels. That's really where our biggest changes are going to come from.
King County Councilmember Zahilay, what inspired you to take up politics as a career, and then come back to the community that you grew up in and run for office?
Well, like you, Tony B, I went to Franklin High School. I was raised in South Seattle. I have seen over time how things have not gotten better for our communities. We've seen how Black wealth has plummeted. I believe its average is getting pretty close to zero now, which is 10 times lower than white residents of Seattle and King County. I've seen how people in South Seattle have lost their homes and small businesses. I've seen small business after small business that I used to go to, local restaurants and barbershops closing down, people being pushed out into South King County. So being in elected office is just one way for me to participate in making my community better. There are plenty of ways to do that. People should think about what makes them come alive and then do that thing. You know, you are creating change, Tony B, through radio and communication and art. And I want the youth to know that they can create change in every way possible. And they should definitely consider public office if that's one of the things that makes them come alive.
And on that note, Councilmember Zahilay, everyone has the ability with the technology that we have right now to be what I like to call media content providers. And it's just a matter of saying, how do I communicate? Who do I want to communicate with? How do I reach these folks? And what is my message? But awareing yourself of the technology today provides everyone out there the ability to communicate effectively, peer to peer, to share your messaging. This isn't wizard stuff. Um, it can be done by everyone. Councilmember Zahilai, originally the conversation was to talk about where we're at with COVID-19, but again, as I mentioned, it was like every day something changed. And so if we can get an update here about where we're at, and I know this is going to probably be impacted by the number of folks, again, as you mentioned, who had to make the decision about their health, or their ability to exist with humanely,
Hmm.
and took to the streets to protest. We're probably going to see some uptick. Be my guess. I'm
Yeah.
not a physician, but we're doing exactly the opposite of what we were told to do when we were under stay at home. And now folks are at there shoulder to shoulder. Again, we know that there are different ways that this can be transmitted just by talking and breathing. Where are we at with COVID-19?
So, when we're talking from the public health side in terms of the rate of growth of the disease, we're doing good relative to the rest of the country, right? Not only has the rate of growth slowed down, but the actual number of cases is going down, which is a good thing. But like you said, that data is from before all of the protesting and gathering and all of these things have been happening. So I can't say where we're going to be a week from now. But in terms of the actual numbers going down, good. Now, that being said, we all know for when we're talking about marginalized communities, the overall numbers don't tell the full story. You have to think about the disproportionality. And the last time I saw the figures, you know, Hispanic and Latinx people were 4 times as likely of transmitting the virus as white counterparts. Black people were 2 times more likely to uh, catch the virus than white counterparts. So our communities have to be extra careful. And at the same time, we're the ones that are continue to be most exposed, especially when we have to go out and march and protest for justice.
Do you have any updates on, again, it's only been a couple months, 3 months or so, where we're at in our economic recovery? As we call it, opening back up.
Hmm.
Does this mean that, in particular, businesses that are small businesses, large businesses, whatever, that are owned by people of color, marginalized communities, will be opening back up? Will people be going back to work? Do you have any information that you can share with us now on what this economic recovery is looking like?
Tony B, your question is very timely because just a couple hours ago, the governor just accepted King County's application to go into phase 1.5, meaning most restaurants and small businesses are able to open back up and have people physically in their space at limited capacity, of course. So if you're a barbershop or a salon, for example, you can open back up and have your space at 25% capacity. So the process of opening back up slowly is happening as of today.
And I got a couple minutes left here that I want to make sure I give you the room for final words if there's just anything you want to share with our community.
Tony B, have you already shared with the community about the Rainier Beach testing site? I'm sure you have, but it's always good reminder.
We have, and we've been in contact with them, and we've addressed the complaints
Hmm.
that they were having there, which it were in regard to testing. Some folks had to lie to get tested.
Mm,
And so we did address that with the University of
okay.
Washington Medicine. We
Okay.
don't think that you should have to lie to get tested. My understanding now is they're moving to Rainier Beach because people weren't comfortable also with the boat launch, and it just
Okay.
didn't look like a place that was inviting. There was no signage.
Okay.
I haven't checked to see if those things have been corrected, but if you weren't exhibiting symptoms, you couldn't get tested, and of course that flies in the face of a community that has many multi-generational homes. And then
Right.
so folks were being asked, are you having any symptoms? No. And then they were being told to say yes. I don't think our community should have to lie.
Absolutely, that's right. And if I can support in that messaging, Tony B, if you want me to add my name or email these concerns once you've gotten an update, I'm happy to do so. We need to make sure all of our communities in the South End have access to reliable testing.
Well, I appreciate it, King County Councilmember Zahilay. Here at Rainier Avenue Radio, we're just trying to get it done,
Right.
and be in support of our community and respond to the needs of our community. We haven't signed any petitions. We haven't created any marches or rallies, but we've been certainly following those and supporting those from our community. And I would like to remind everyone again of the march and rally taking place on Sunday at 2 o'clock in South Seattle. That is going to go from Othello down east on Othello to Rainier, and then south on Rainier, and end up in Rainier Beach. And then again at 3:30 till 5 o'clock at Leschi, there'll be a rally, and it'll be specifically addressing the concerns of K through 5 students. And just earlier, I left Franklin, where they were having their demonstration. So again, King County Council Members Zahilay, I appreciate your availability. And as I've said before, the best ability is availability. And
Yes, sir.
we appreciate that from you.
Thank you so much, Tony B. Have a wonderful day.
We'll be back to talk with Richard Johnson from the Kent Black Action Coalition to find out what's happening in Kent right after this.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not translating the lyrics of Boogie Oogie Oogie for bored Europeans, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Women are not an homogenous group.
We face discrimination differently depending on factors such as ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and more.
Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to amplify women's voices.
They are the experts of their own lives, initiating conversations within their community about challenges they face, the solutions they're working on, and the opportunities they see.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 for Women's Voices on Air. We know our challenges. We are the experts of our lives.
We are master multitaskers, prioritizing our family, friends, and our faith above our own needs.
Our needs and voices are too often overlooked.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. for Women's Voices on Air.
We tell our stories in our own way.
This is Karen Z with RainierAvenueRadio.world, and we want to hear from you. Our goal is to amplify and share the diverse voices of Southeast Seattle residents. Do you know of an engaged community member who should be featured in a community spotlight? Tell us about them. Do you know of an upcoming family-friendly, educational, or cultural event coming up? Tell us about it. If you have news to share, contact us by emailing RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com. Once again, please email us at RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com.
The Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, empowering communities and changing lives. The Urban League has been there to serve when our community is at its lowest. It's never mattered what the crisis was. The systemic oppression remains constant for those most vulnerable. Here at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, we'll be temporarily adjusting our hours of operation and available services. If you are in need of resources, we recommend that you give us a call at 206-461-3792. To make an appointment, press 0 and speak with the receptionist. Walk-in hours will be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. And hey, we'll gladly work with you via phone as best as we can if you're exhibiting any signs of illness to assist you with information to save your home, find you a place to sleep, or connect you to job opportunities. The Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. That's 206-461-3792.